for our upcoming webinar. We'll start in just a second, but again, thank you for joining us as usual. That said, since we're getting up to a good number, just want to welcome everyone. I can go ahead and get things started in terms of our PowerPoint deck. And just to be sure that everyone can see the deck, maybe a thumbs up from someone.
Kenny, I see the sort of the presentation side, so not the single picture.
Oh, okay, got it.
Switch screens or something.
If you go to display settings up in that corner, it should be able to give you a different one.
See, this is why I wanted Kenny to do it.
There you go.
Again, welcome everyone. I'm Kenny Taylor with the Center for Nonprofits and Philanthropy here at the Bush School at Texas A&M. Really excited to have you all with us today, and more excited to introduce a friend and someone who was a former donor to my organization, Big Brothers Big Sisters, over in Austin, Texas, when she led the Dell Corporate Foundation. And today, Lisa Huddleston is going to talk to us about leveraging corporate philanthropic resources to inspire change. We won't go through all the details of our center, but just as a reminder, we stood our center up in 2017, which is when I joined the university. And I have had the honor and pleasure of working with many of you all. So again, thank you for joining us today. And I'll let Lisa introduce herself and we'll jump right into our presentation because we have a lot of great information to go through. So Lisa, with that said, thank you for being here with us today, and we'll let you have it. It looks like you're on mute right now, but we'll let you have it.
All righty. Can you guys hear me? Thumbs up. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Back in the day, I knew Dr. Taylor as Kenny, so I'm really excited to be here. Like Kenny said, I knew him back when I ran the Dell Corporate Foundation. And sometimes I wonder, like, who in the world gave me permission to have some of these big jobs? But I've been able to utilize corporate resources and give a lot of money, talent, time, kind of, you name it, away. So first, I worked at Dell Computer back in the day when people were flipping. Oh, Kenny, don't do that slide just yet. If you don't. Before they were doing backflips off of their cubicles when the stock would hit a certain point. I missed that one. But so I ran the corporate giving for Dell. And then after that, I moved west and I ran the Walt Disney Company's corporate giving. So that was quite interesting and a shell shock. And then my family was calling and I really moved back. And I had a consulting firm the whole time that I would kind of mix and do strategic philanthropy for really big nonprofits, but also some corporate giving as well. Eventually, I ended up at Tito's Handmade Vodka. And so what I thought I would do is I would go through those three models later on throughout the presentation. But just a quick quiz before I dive in. For 2021, can anybody guess how much of Americans gave to charity in 2021, according to Giving USA, which is kind of the known expert? There's no wrong answers. 11%. Okay, we're talking just total giving. 7 billion. I like that. Okay. Okay, So believe it or not, Kenny, you can flip to the next slide. Total giving was $485 billion last year. So when you think about philanthropy, that is a lot of jingle jangle. And that was actually up from 2020. So you think about the pandemic year, and then you roll into 2021, people wanted to give more. And what I am really interested in talking about today is corporate philanthropy. So although it looks like a small piece of that pie, that's, 18%, I'm sorry, it's 4%. It increased year over year by 18%. And that's around 21 billion. So several factors related to that. A lot of pandemic giving, a lot of racial equity giving saw that number go up. So that was really exciting to see. And I wanted to say that the corporate giving, the $21 billion, that includes cash, in kind, and which in kind is a huge piece of that. And missing one number, foundation giving. So whether it be from their corporate, and I'll go through some different models. So from their corporation or from their foundation or from in kind. So we'll go through that. And then we'll slip to the next slide. And I'm kind of giving you the answers, but I really was curious, when you look at corporate foundation or corporate giving, you think about what resources do you have, right? So at Dell, immediately, we looked at, we had a foundation model, right? Where you give money, strictly grant making, right? Like you're traditionally used to. And then we kind of blew that up and became the just straight from the company. So you can flip back as well. Some other different resources that obviously corporations have to give is traditional PR, cause marketing, volunteerism. And Kenny, I probably called you and asked if you wanted a board member, and to get really specific on what type of board member do you want them to be. Legal expertise, finance expertise, what gender, what color, all of those things. So we had the power to do all of that. Again, traditional grant making, giving from the company, and then employee giving, which I was really proud to start at all three of those companies. So employee giving is really when you have the opportunity to match or give straight to the charity through your paycheck, or you go out and you give to Big Brothers Big Sisters. You can come back and put that into this system, and we would match that. So we use that at both. I started that at Dell. We used it at Disney, interesting story there. And then also we utilize that at Tito's. And then lastly, we have dollars for doers. So a lot of times when you guys are going out and you're volunteering and you're giving your time to Big Brothers Big Sisters or any organization that is a vetted 501c3, we will pay the nonprofit on your behalf for going out and volunteering. So, and then lastly, I just wanted to add in, which we'll get into a little bit later, is some other resources are corporate spokespeople. And this becomes interesting, not necessarily with Dell, but probably a little bit later on as we talk through this. So let's jump in and talk about Dell. So that is the next slide. So when I arrived at Dell, we really were foundation driven, right? We hadn't sat down and developed a strategic plan. And when I left, by the time I left Dell, we really came up with a program that was kind of best in practice. we blew up our foundation because we were repatriating a lot of the cash that was coming over from, you name a country, we were located there, right? And so we were repatriating a lot of cash to give to nonprofits in those countries. And when I was there, it was a lot more difficult to do. So you're bringing cash over from Asia, you're repatriating it in the United States, and then you're giving that money out to nonprofit organizations, right? So that's a little bit difficult to do. Does anybody have any thoughts as to why we might blow up the foundation and give specifically from the company? I don't know if everyone's on mute or wants to type in the chat or.
And folks can feel free to throw responses in the chat.
So my assumption would be there'd be some some corporate tax ramifications, be my first guess.
Tax ramifications, and then also you're really limited when you're a corporate foundation as to what you can do with those resources, right? So sometimes I would get applications, believe it or not, for computers, and they would be, hey, Lisa, I need 100 computers for my classroom. I'm XYZ charity, and I specifically want Apple computers. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I wish I could call this person and have a conversation with you on the side, but technically it wouldn't make a difference. We couldn't specify that it had to be a Dell computer such as that. So when we switch from the foundation model over to corporate giving, we can say, all right, we're going to test out XYZ number of computers. We're going to test them out in India. We're going to utilize solar, and we're going to see how this works, right? Because we couldn't do that through a foundation model. It was just a little bit more restrictive and harder to do. So think about a foundation. You can't, for instance, you can't say, if you're using it as a marketing tool, you can't say, all right, I want Dell's name in 50-inch font or 50 feet font, and you'll get the funds. If you are not a foundation, you can do it through the corporate giving model. Another thing that we really developed while we were there at Dell was the One Dell, One Community model. And that was a model that had 3 components to it. And Dell was extremely global. So we had, the first was learn. So we brought everybody into where folks were. I don't care if you were in Ireland, you were in Africa, you were in Disney. If you were in India where you had 20,000 employees, we brought the nonprofits so people could meet with them and learn about what they had to offer. And then the second step to that was really engage. And we offered the employee giving, right, that we talked about earlier, through the commitment part. So they went out and they learned, they engaged through Global Community Involvement Month. So they volunteered during that month, and then they committed their time, talent, and resources overseas. So it was a really cool campaign that we had. Those are just some of the things that we did at Dell, but just thinking about the assets that you have and how do you utilize those was a lot of fun. It was also fun to think through, all right, I remember going into a meeting and it was with all the executives, right? And so I'm marching in there and I'm saying, all right, let's do a long-term plan. Let's look at 5 years from now. What does this look like? And so we got Michael to commit to 1% of pre-tax profit for our giving. And then we had to decide where we were going to give that funding, right? So we looked at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, right? That's an easy thing to see and judge on where you're giving. The second thing was, how many employees do we have there? So for instance, we had, I think, 14 or 19,000 employees at the time at Dell in India. And then we looked at, what do we want our market share to be there, right? So that's a tremendous opportunity to have sales there. And again, you can't do that through a foundation model. So that's when we kind of broke that up. Does anyone have any questions about the Dell model, or you want to wait till the end, Kenny?
No, we don't need to, we can surely wait to the end, but maybe just for context, I remember the day when you invited me with regard to your employee campaign to actually come into Dell and do a presentation on my particular organization. And that was a shift from how we received money from you all in the past. I looked at that as a good thing, where I, as the executive, had the opportunity to interface with employees around this, around your employee campaign. Maybe could you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, it was so fun because it looked so different in every country, right? So in India, they had like huge parties, and really just did it up. In Europe, where giving is you're taxed at such a high rate, we still had that event where people came in to learn about the organization, but their kind of giving rate might not be as high as in the US. In India, you wouldn't believe it was off the charts. It's always the people in manufacturing or the people that have the most that seem to have the least that seem to give the most as far as participation is concerned. Anything else on Dell? I could talk forever on it. No? Okay. Well, we'll move into an interesting one. So I went from kind of one thing that we sold, it was computers only. We kind of straightened that out with the 1% giving. We're still doing that model today. Into the fire of the Walt Disney Company. So when you think of Disney, Disney owns everything. And I tried to put campaigns up here that I participated in or my team did while I was there. I don't know if anybody can tell, but that's a younger Joe Bro in this campaign with the First Lady Michelle Obama. So Disney actually owns ABC, Parks and Rec, Parks and Resorts, cruise ships, ESPN, Disney Junior channels. There's actually a whole department called Princess and Fairies that is run out of consumer products. Like, you would not believe how big the company is. And they really wanted to have a one-size-fits-all campaign on 3 areas of giving. So that was tough, but we again strategized and had the 1% model, but this was an amazing program. So hopefully you guys are old enough to remember the magic of healthy living and Michelle Obama going out and really jumping rope and doing exercises and getting everybody really excited about learning how to eat healthy. So what we did is we utilized, and you can go to the next slide if you want to, Kenny. So we utilized the First Lady, and she was like such a champion, such a pro, and she like did the layups with the kids. And so we shot PSAs that were really across all of our channels, which again, you think that that's a huge reach, and it was. We changed some of the food that we served at the Walt Disney Company, at the Parks and Resorts. We changed some of the consumer products as well. The Ad Council gave us time and resources to publicize this on their channel. And then we also partnered with Kaboom, which helps build playgrounds. So we really had a 360 approach to this. And it also fit into some of our older hate to say older demographics, but I would be one of the older demographics, but it fits into that as well. So it was a lot of fun. I learned a tremendous amount at Zell. But if you kind of think back to those resources, what would a potential problem be? Right? So you're as a company, you're sponsoring this, you've got Michelle, the First Lady on board, you've got all of these different organizations, changing the food at the parks, you've got it going on, integrated into the television shows and nonprofits. Anybody have any idea what you could run into? You just seeing celebrities. Agree, Jason, very much so. Well, it was like the first week I got there, and I got the phone call, and I was in the executive offices, and Mark Villalobos to everybody. Yes, sometimes your talent can want to do things on their own time. And so it happened to be the time that Miley Cyrus was coming out with some of her risque videos, and so she's in these commercials with the magic of healthy living with the First Lady, and then off doing some of the things on the side, and you really can't help that. And so it's just something to think about when you utilize celebrities. Kind of, it's interesting to look at. So that was lots of fun. And so, it was a great campaign. Again, there's a lot of synergy at Disney. They get behind everything when there's a new campaign that comes out. So anywho, so the last kind of model that I wanted to talk through, and hopefully you guys have all participated or are 21 and can participate, is I worked for Tito's Handmade Vodka, and I helped run their philanthropy program. And first, I'm going to not talk about the retail store, but I'm going to talk about, have you guys been to any events where there has been Tito's has been served? Maybe everybody's too young. Some of the older folks, maybe Jason, you look like you might be.
I certainly have.
Yes, Kenny. So really, you look at the philanthropic models and what levers do you have to use? It's a family-owned, oh, good, Maggie. It's a family-owned business. And so it's only 25. You think back to at the very beginning, and it's the first legal distillery in Texas. So what Tito did is he was trying to get the brand in the hand. He was doing everything possible. I mean, he literally was living out at the distillery where they were making the spirits, etc. And he started doing charitable events and sponsorships. And he was like, wow, this feels so great. Everybody's coming up, they're hugging, they're loving, they're kissing on me. And so this is a true story. He was able to hire his first employee, and he said, I don't know, Tito, who should I give to? Like, where do I give? You've been supporting all these charities and getting the brand in the hand. And then, and lo and behold, he said, I don't know, and you can look this up online. There's a video. He said, I don't know, why don't we go ahead and love them all? So that was a great thing when we were only a few hundred, a few thousand charities. But when you move to like 12,000 charities, it's a little bit harder to monitor. So if you have any events, it's still the same thing. You go to our online request store or online request form, you can ask for it, and they'll certainly try to help you with either an activation or something. So you have to remember, it's getting the brands in the hand on that one, right? It's not necessarily from a foundation, but it is a personal gift. So it's owned by Bert Beveridge, believe it or not, and his wife, Lori. And giving from the company is the same thing from them giving personally. So you could give from Tito's Handmade Vodka, and it would be the same thing as a grant that would go out to the public. And if there were some things that were controversial, they had different levers and different ways to kind of give to those and do that. So that was great. Have to say the alcohol laws are a little bit like the Wild Wild West. Anything in Texas, I got to know the colonel who was in charge of TABC in Austin, is much different than in California, or there's several states that control the product, and you have to work with them and know all of the legal laws behind it. There's also the hand sanitizer. Yes, that was a pure accident, by the way. The hand sanitizer, there was an article that came out a few weeks prior to the pandemic really hitting, and they were saying, just use some hand sanitizer. And then they started looking into it, and they gave tons and tons and tons of hand sanitizer all over the US, because the alcohol, it provided regular hand sanitizer when we literally had none. Also, Tito personally bought a bunch of equipment and sent that out to New York hospitals, to Florida hospitals. We ran programs where we fed first responders. I mean, so you think of the layers at Disney and trying to get things done, and then it's just like, hey, Tito, or, you can send a text. So there's pros and cons to every model, right? But it was really good during the pandemic to be able to do that. There's also, I don't know, has anybody heard of commercial co-venture laws? Anyone? Honestly, I hadn't until, hi, Mark, until we got a letter from the Mississippi Attorney General. And it said that we had to document and record all of our giving. So what the sales reps used to do is they would set up giving so they would say, all right, we're going to serve the Texas Mule, right? And then for every dollar that is on top of it, it will go to XYZ charity. So it's not the case in Texas, but in 30 plus states, you have to register with the Attorney General in order to sell that product, right? And so I can look at ads, I can look at Super Bowl ads, and I'm like, well, the legal department's not going to be too happy with that, because you have to have an under and an over, like what you're going to go up to. And you have to make sure that the charity is registered to solicit funds in all of those states. Does that make sense? Yep. So anytime you're seeing a dollar per or a roundup at checkout, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this would be a great idea for my charity, I'm going to ask, whatever brand it is to do it. You have to make sure that one, your charity is registered to solicit funds in those states. Two, that it is in legal compliance with the attorney generals in each one of those states. So I would not suggest the beg for forgiveness later. It's a big business that they kind of go after now. Another cool thing that we did that required a commercial co-venture was any product from our web store goes back, and all of the net proceeds, so you can see all the fine print, go back to the nonprofit that was the recipient. So we crossed several $1 million in doing so, and all it is Alyssa or somebody else at checkout selecting, buying some cool swag, selecting Team Rubicon, and they would get a huge check each quarter from us on behalf of the consumer. So again, looking back at the resources that you have, we had some cool swag. We had people that knew about the commercial co-venture laws, and we would work with those charities to really promote that, right? So whether they're sending it out via social, whether they're posing in Tito swag with their Team Rubicon, it was really something fun and easy to do, and a nice way to give back. So anywho, so I think I'm running ahead of time. Are there any pitfalls that you can think of on working for a vodka brand that might come your way?
Retail, like when things are going from transitioning from brick and mortar to online shopping.
Oh, yeah, that's actually not legal in a lot of states. I'm kind of talking more on the charitable giving model. So say or that mainly support children. Maggie, you're right on the money. So it's illegal for not only Tito's, but any spirits brand to have the perception that they're marketing to children, right? It has to be over 21. I have all kinds of stories I can tell you, and I'm like, oh dear God, why would we do this? Trying to get liquor donated for an event now. Oh, Lakeisha, there you go. Well, you can, as long as it's a registered 501c3, you can see it on their website, Tito's Vodka /donate. But pretty much, most people can do that, but you have to be really careful on marketing to children, whether it be on premise or off premise, say at a store, etc. So that was one. And then kind of as you got bigger, Tito kind of wanted to, his name is on the product. And once you become the #1 spirit brand in the US, it's really kind of hard to fade into oblivion, right? I mean, people stop him everywhere. Like he's a little, he is a celebrity, right? I mean, it's an entrepreneur story of rags to riches. So it's pretty fantastic.
Where are they at now in terms of how they think about their thinking on philanthropy at this point?
Tito is actually doing a lot of philanthropy out of his own pocket, right? So he actually has done everything from fund the vaccine, right? Funding vaccine, funding research, funding studies. He actually did some things with giving funding to a university who shall not be named. And people from my university were really upset about that, right? So, those are some of the pitfalls, right? When it's a family-owned business, but it's kind of his money and he can do what he wants to with it. Think of a Kendra Scott, same type of thing, right? She's doing a huge thing with entrepreneurs and UT. That might rub some folks in College Station the wrong way, and they might not want to, participate, but it's kind of hers to give.
Sure.
So any questions about, kind of 3 of those models that, we talked about Dell, which is extremely, can you address how young startup nonprofits are viewed by corporate giving departments? Okay, so that's a great question, Jason. So the question is, if I have my glasses on and I have my notebook, so hang with me if I'm not reading this correctly. Can you address how young startup nonprofits are viewed by corporate giving departments? How do we establish credibility? Well, we never want to, and we broke this rule a lot, but typically the rule is that you don't want to give more than 20% of your operating budget or the nonprofit's operating budget to charity. And, you know, I don't know what sector that you're in, but, you know, just reaching out and asking veterans are amazing. There's always folks that want to give to veteran organizations. First, I might ask if, you know, there's so many veterans organizations, how have you made sure that you're not utilizing somebody else? There's not another model that's already out there that you could kind of piggyback or collaborate or work together. That's a big thing.
Yeah. So the quick answer is that there's a gap. Congress has a program called TAP, Transition Assistance Program, and it's widely regarded by congressmen as well as the service members who try to use it as being a failed program. So they know it's failed. They just don't know what to do about it. So what we've created is a pilot. We did our pilot back in 2020 with Texas A&M University, but in that pilot, we proved that what we do actually works, but we help veterans figure out who they are and why they exist on planet Earth. And there is not a program that does that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's really tough. And I would go back and see if there's any type of thing, and I'm happy to talk to you afterwards as well. A lot of people really liked working with Team Rubicon because of their name recognition. But, you know, if you can even get, people are much more compelled to give. I don't have my statistics in front of me, but people are much more compelled to give if there is a match involved, or if you have a front runner that is going to support your organization, right? There's also a lot of competitions like the social innovation contests that are, you know, whether it be at A&M or UT, or there's a lot of funding out there that exist for organizations like that. Front runner organizations. So I would say one that is kind of well-defined. So I will come back to World Central Kitchen as an example, right? So we tried to fund them very early on, several years ago, and you won't believe this. They were not registered to fundraise in all 50 states. And so we literally formed a partnership with them and said, will you please get registered to fundraise in all of these? I think it's 30 plus states that it matters in, and we will go ahead and go big and support you guys. But they got big really quick because of Jose Andres would go out and he would tweet, use his social media campaigns, everything, and utilize the news to really bring awareness to that campaign. I mean, he's always working. I got to do a one-on-one call in front of our company with him, and the sound, it was during a huge storm and the sound was not working correctly, and in a very Spanish way. He was like, I give up. And I'm like, no, we've got several hundred employees ready to listen to you. But I mean, he's always working on that, and he always incorporates that into his restaurants and asks for support from his vendors, right? So we worked with them a lot on supplying frontline foods to folks. They had a program that that provided meals to first responders as well. But kind of having a face, which can be a really good thing and can be, you know, kind of a tough thing as well. I will tell you, just on this retail, I don't know how we're doing on time here, but on this retail store partnership, our consumers were the ones that made the decision on who they wanted to fund. And every time it was always an environmental organization, all the time. I mean, I consider farmers an environmental organization, followed closely by a pet organization. I wish veterans were on top, but in sponsorship of doing events, they were way up here. Does that make sense? Yeah. We also provided toolkits, which I should add in here. And I was actually just talking to the head of the Visa Foundation, and he had an amazing like one pager, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, he's passing it out to, you can download it from the web, and you can see what they will and what they won't fund and what the timelines are. We had that. We also had a one pager specifically from Tito's, like, if it looks like somebody's under 21, don't hashtag or use social media with us. Don't have drunkenness displays, just really simple things. But it was just a one pager that, everybody asked, how can we thank a brand? We would send that out to folks to use as well. I hope I answered your question, Jason, and you can call me afterwards if you want. Anyone else? So in-kind giving, again, a lot easier with alcohol, but you can do in-kind giving with anything. So you can do in-kind giving with getting it into PSAs, into announcements, into all kinds of shows that you're doing, etc. I mean, there's a lot of giving that goes on that is in kind through, say, Star Wars is coming out, right? And they want a one-on-one experience with, I'm going to mess up somebody's name. I'm not a Star Wars fan, sorry. They want a one-on-one experience with Dr. Taylor, and they will go on and they will either do a raffle online through Charity Buzz or Omaze, or they will just flat out do a donation. And so when folks do that, they raise a tremendous amount of money for that organization. And then they also get, kind of a one-on-one experience as well. Any other questions? Quiet group. Where's Villalobos? I know you have questions.
Yeah, we can keep kind of going through and then open for questions in the end, since it looks like we're closer toward the end of the slides, I think.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that I kind of already discussed. I think the 1% model is interesting that we talked about at Dell, kind of looking at, and I mean, we still use that today, like, right? Where is, if we have 1% of pre-tax profits, and it made it a lot easier when people were coming to us to ask for funds, to be able to say, here's where we give and why, and then here's where we don't give and why. And if you were an employee, you could always give a donation and it would be matched, right? But, we're not going to give to some organization that we don't have employees that are located by, in that case. Because we really want them to get involved as well. Any tips that proved that has a unique logic model? Oh, the logic model. And or how to get a decision maker to physically visit our location. Well, I can tell you, believe it or not, it is one of the hardest jobs. I can't even see your typos, so don't worry. You can, it's really tough to get a giving officer to visit your organization, right? I mean, when I worked for Tito's, I would find myself at the end of the day at like 3:30 hangry, and I'd just been at my desk all day and I hadn't gotten up. But So it's really hard to do that. And the other thing is when people are in kind of program officers, they don't love it when you go around them. But I always try to be available if somebody had questions or needed something, to pick up the phone, because you never know. You never know where you're going to end up in 20 years talking to Dr. Taylor. But, you know, they remember that kindness. So, yeah, and it's all about
So-
networking, kind of getting out there. And somebody knows somebody, I guarantee you.
One thing we had to think about in relation to that same question is, how do you get folks to visit your organization? One way I might think about that is, how do you get folks to see your mission in action? And so even though we were big brothers, big sisters, you know, giving officers couldn't walk into our offices and see our mission live and in action, because in that case, the relationships took place out in the community somewhere. So maybe one way to think about that question is, how do you get those giving officers to see what you do in person? And I'm not sure if that takes place actually in your office, or is there a way to see that, say, out in the community somewhere? But that was always a hard task for us, is to get folks to come into our office, with the exception of when the gift was almost final and they wanted to come in and see the location and the team that worked there and was going to be responsible for a gift that they were getting ready to make.
So, that's a good question. You know, I would call them mini sizzles, right? And just send those over to giving officers and show kind of what you do, whether it's blurring out faces, whether it's the backs of kids, etc. And make sure it aligns with what the company's doing. Not everything is going to align with every company, right? Not every nonprofit is going to align with every company. So there are frameworks to help connect a company's product to a charitable need. So I would say, what is the product and what is the need? I don't know if I helped you, Kenny, on that one or not, but also another one is, like, if you have people that are volunteering, every time when I worked at Dell, I would always say, Alyssa, Jason, and Lakeisha are volunteering there, and they have given X amount of time. So that added credibility. And I always would call the nonprofit, if I didn't know personally the individual that was volunteering. And that's part of the grant request, right? For people to fill that out as well. But talk to me about the product to a charitable need. And it looks like that was Darius. Does that sound right? Darius, are you shy? Did you go away?
We can't, it doesn't look like you're on mute, but I can't hear you.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give an example, like Walt Disney, very easy. And I almost worked on the Mattel initiative with the, I was actually going back to school, so I couldn't take that one on. But with the Barbie, Ken and Barbie that was coming out, right? So there were so many just different ways to raise funds and to tie that into a charitable initiative. Whether it be girls, whether it be, you know, sometimes boys, etc. And then utilizing some of the talent as well, and to get a mention on there. But, you know, that's easier with kids, or it depends on the audience. You know, vodka is obviously not, we'll sponsor a gala, but we won't, it's hard to do other things. But anybody,
I guess one way I might, you know, think about that question again, just kind of back to Darius, what you asked is many times, at least my experience anyways, with corporations, and when you say a framework to connect the company's product to a charitable need, just like in many cases with fund development, those corporations might not understand, but it's, our job as nonprofit executives to make a case and develop your own that connects why their product potentially is important, or how it would make a contribution to your mission, because many times they can't see that. But our jobs as executives is to develop what that framework might look like, or maybe not even think about it as a framework, but just what's the case, how you would particularly explain how their product could potentially contribute to your mission at your organization. And I would just argue that my experience has been that many times those folks can't see that the way that you understand your mission.
Yeah, so to try and elaborate a bit further about what I was trying to get across, it's, I hope you can hear me all right.
Yes,
Yes.
we can. We just can't see your face, but we can hear you.
I think one a different camera for my face and then one for the voice, but okay.
You're ahead of me.
So it's basically, it's a professional Oregon campus with tribology and friction. And so that could be applied to a lot of fields. And just like a group of engineers who have heavy ties to industry, and you can think of Shell making motor oils to like unique instrumentation labs. And so like trying to get and solicit all of these different groups together into, some sort of, it could be a product, it could be an initiative. Things that just come to mind for me is like when you mentioned veterans, like sponsoring a free oil change on Veterans Day for a veteran or something like that. Yeah. And so, how, and what you said, Kenneth, is like really good, like helping them see the need and matching it to it. So is there like other ways that frameworks that could generate these kinds of ideas, so it's more organic to them, where they can just, it's not a big hassle, and it's path of least resistance to take something that's an existing product that they manufacture and putting it into an initiative or a philanthropic side of it.
So if I hear you correctly, it might be engineering, and whether it is jobs, etc., for that organization. Is that right or not right?
It's more of like you can think of it like a society of professionals, and they will have their conferences every year talking about what new research is done about this field. So it's trying to apply a field to solve a problem that they are very capable of doing, but the philanthropic aspect is missing.
Oh my gosh. So I think about, and I know he's kind of got a little bit of a bad name right now in some circles, but I think about Tesla, right? So Tesla has gone in and he said, all right, we're going to do 2-year degrees for anybody in the Del Valley ISD. And I think he's actually doing AISD as well, campus. So anybody that has, that utilizes jobs in that area, of course they're going to sponsor that, because it's a way to recruit, right? And it's a way to get folks from that industry to help work there and for the workforce, is what I see. And I would also tie that into not just, there's different areas of the company, right? So to me, don't always love saying this, but there is like HR, right? They have some money in their coffers, especially if they want to recruit specific type of individuals besides the best person for the job, right? And the best person for the job might not be rising up just because of other problems. But I think that that's a huge one, right? So kind of HR is another way in with that. I also have, and I can send it out. This is something that I made, so I don't want it attached to any organization or any company here, but I handed it out to a nonprofit that was looking for funding, right? So it was, and this would not be the foundation model. This would be strictly PR, giving from a corporation to an organization. And it is as simple, that's kind of, those are just some fun facts, Kenny, don't worry.
Mhm.
But I have it just that I've typed out and I'll have to find it somewhere. But I can send that to you or put it in the chat. But I mean, it's just simple things like, how are you going to recognize this organization? What is your social media reach? How many tweets are you going to do? How many, do you have any partners, such as, like, huge would be the ad council, but at a local level that would highlight the partnership and bring awareness to both of you? And then I would ask the company as well, what are their assets that they can use? If they have a social media reach of a zillion, I don't know, but and just talk through what that is. So it's kind of a give and a take, if that makes sense. And I mean, again, I did this myself. It was for my company. So I'm happy to send that out.
And we can send it out to those who registered today for sure as well too.
Yes, and again, that's my personal one. It does not need to be, thank you, Mark, to attach to everybody, attached to any of the companies that I've worked with.
Mhm.
So it's under Citizen Philanthropy. So.
Yeah, I think those were some great points. And Darius, I think that's a great question or process to think through. And Lisa, the response was excellent. We used to get approached by many corporations based on serving kids that were going to grow up and then need a bank account. So we used to work with the banking industry quite often, and it was all about the brand and services that one day they would use. So Darius, your population, future employees, future workforce base, the skill base that the population that you're talking about and what contributions they could make, I think would be very attractive to a variety of corporations. It's tough to think through. I guess, Lisa, one question I'm sure with folks that have interest in nonprofits here is, and it sounds like it's different if it's an individual owner or a very big global corporation, how do you get close to organizations, I think would certainly be, and is it even worth it when you think about, in the scheme of things, the small percentage that corporate giving is, and the scheme of things, is it worth it today to have that in the mix as part of your revenue stream at nonprofit organizations? And your answer would be?
Of course it is.
Of
Yes.
course.
I need to look the gentleman's name up that just gave so much money to Texas Tech, but he participated in their ag program, right? And so that was important to him. And he came into, and he called it himself a king's ransom worth of money, right? And he is in the top 50 charitable donors up there with the Gates and Warren Buffett, etc. So it might not necessarily be the folks that you're talking to right now, but you never know what will happen to them several years down the road. Jason, if I knew more about your organization, I can say, oh yeah, I have a great organization that you should fund. So but I definitely think it's worth it. I think even at an individual level, we gave money also. That was another program at Dell for people that were volunteering across the globe. And we gave it to the nonprofit in honor of their service and leadership. So, and that gets people's attention, right? And that gets executives' attention too. So.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for your wisdom today and for visiting with us. We appreciate you. For those of you all who joined us today, as always, we continue to thank you for your support and paying attention to our webinars. Our next one will be on April 11th, same time, same format, and that will focus on accelerating systems change. I think Dr. Will Brown was with us. I'm not sure if he still is, but
Yeah, I'm still here, Kenny. Yeah, so we'll be talking to a couple of foundations and talking about the way they think about trying to achieve systematic change in system, educational systems, social service systems, criminal justice systems, those kinds of things, whatever their mission is, and then thinking about how they make investment practices associated with that.
Yeah, we look forward to it as always. And then on May 23rd and 24th, our Leadership and Public Service 2-day in residence program here at Texas A&M University for anyone who's interested in that. And then, of course, our certificate offerings are continuing, and professional certificate offerings, if you're looking for something that's a specialized certificate in whether it be nonprofit leadership, social justice leadership, and fundraising leadership, those will start back in the fall after the summer. So again, thank you all so much, and we'll hopefully see you on April the 11th. And as always, I don't know that we threw the link in the chat, but this will be recorded, and the slide deck will absolutely be up on our resource page at our nonprofit center here. So look for that in case you want to share that with anyone, and we'll do some follow-up in terms of sending out the resource that Lisa mentioned for us. And again, thank you to Lisa so much. I appreciate your time, and it's so good to see you as always.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
All right, we'll hang around a little bit, but for anybody who needs to jump off, please feel free, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
And Lisa, if people want to get further a hold of you, how can they do that? There was a question about that in the chat.
I think it was, am I on mute? Okay, I'm not on mute. I think my LinkedIn should be on the graphics. Is
We
it
can
not?
grab it real quick as well too.
We can always add it once we upload it.
I
Okay.
mean, it's really easy. It's Lisa Huddleston, like a football huddle on SON. Back to my days at Dell selling computers. So yeah,
We'll include it on the resource page.
sounds good.
Lisa, I found that gift to Texas Tech. So it's Gordon Davis,
Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
$44 million.
And the people didn't have, I again, I'm on more of the giving side, but they had no idea what he was. I mean, he kind of is really funny. He's like, look, I don't think they knew what I was capable of giving. Right. And so he kind of shocked him when he went in and said, here it is.
Funny.
So, yeah, you never know.